You have to truly believe in the magic.
How's it going, Magic fans? And welcome to this week's episode of Penny for Your Thoughts, the Orlando Magic UK podcast. We are recording on Friday, the 19th of May, and it's been a bit of a long week because it's our second one on here, and we could do with a little bit of a sugar hit. So I think if Gideons are watching this and you want to send us free sponsorship, free cookies, cakes, I believe it's Rainbow Crunch Day today. Um, do the decent thing over there in Disney. Get them in a box and get them here in 24 hours. And you've got two willing recipients here. I do think Paul would also like it, but we can't say what G would do. So you'll notice there's only just the two of us here, but I'm sure we can make it if we try. Mr. Mikey Clark, how we doing?
Evening, mate. I'm doing well. It's been a good week. I've caught up on my sleep after staying up for Tuesday night's lottery, which didn't go quite to plan, but in some respects it did. How's your week been, mate?
Busy, mate.
Yeah.
Obviously having a late night in the middle of the week didn't help the freshness, but I'm hoping the good folks down at Gideon's will be able to sort that out. And mine's the banana loaf cookie if you're watching
Oh,
this.
okay.
How about you, Maggie?
It's all about the pistachio cookie, mate.
Okay. What do you reckon Paul would be?
That's a good question. It's got to be something with bacon in it, isn't there? Is there
Oh,
a bacon cookie of some kind?
It could be June's cookie. Maybe it'd be a bacon one that we just keep dropping on the floor and it breaks all the time. And what would
It's,
G be, do you reckon, Maggie?
oh, mate, it's got to be something sugar-free, isn't it? Seeing he's diabetic.
I could see like I don't know, a cookie made with Stella or something like that.
I could, or it's got to be something with salt because G's a bit salty sometimes, isn't he,
Oh,
about certain things?
I could see that. I could definitely see that. Would it be purple and gold? So he like kind of chokes on it when
Can
he's
you imagine? Can you
purple and
imagine that?
gold. It would be called the Cardiff Cosmer, and it'd be like one of those little pictures of G handed out on the menu. He's got to re-rock when he sees this, isn't he?
Mate, I don't know. I can't believe he never went when he was over there, but next year when we go back for the playoffs, we'll be
Well, we've
there.
got free sponsorship. We tried. We definitely tried, Mikey. We definitely tried. So in tonight's episode, we're going to talk about this draft. We're going to consider what should the Magic do. We're going to have a quick touch on the Ja Morant situation, which seems to be everywhere on my YouTube feed at the minute. And we'll give some quick thoughts on the finals in both the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference. I believe because of how things are going with the Lakers and the Celtics, and the Heat, that's maybe why G isn't here this evening. Affiliate plug, NBA EU, we know are consistently updating their inventory. If you're thinking of buying from them and you wish to use our affiliate code, it's Magic UK 10. This will get you 10% off your order. We're not saying it'll be the best deal on the day, but we will say it does work, so feel free to use it. If you're thinking of something a little more bespoke, you can head over to our online store, which is magicfansapparel.tmail.com for some of our own merchandise, and the links for this will be in the description. And finally, the one we really appreciate, help support the podcast, simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Orlando Magic UK. And if you have subscribed through another platform, it would really help us if you really did hit that YouTube button, because that's the one we're really trying to drive up. So, Mikey, it's been a big week. We obviously had the live one, and we ended up with the 6th and the 11th picks in the upcoming draft. Again, thank you to anybody who attended our watch party. Massive thanks to anyone who tuned in. We hope you found it entertaining. There weren't any puns at all on our feed, and the dust has settled. Mikey, I think you were pretty positive. So how are we feeling about these picks at 6 and 11?
Yeah, it's not my views not really changed from Tuesday night. I mean, we've spoken about this on previous episodes, and we've spoken about this off air, mate, haven't we? About I didn't really feel like if we missed out on a top 2 or top 3 pick, I wasn't gonna feel super disappointed. In fact, I was going into it thinking if we end up around 6, 7, 8, I'm setting myself up for that scenario. And the fact that we got 6, really 6 and 11, if you think about it, it was the best of a worst case scenario. We got the highest pick that we could possibly get from the Bulls at 11, which was fantastic. And we've seen some epic meltdowns, shall we say, on Twitter from a few Bulls fans and podcasts, and that they didn't learn from last year. and we'll talk about that trade that led to the 11th pick shortly. But yeah, and the 6th pick, obviously, without landing a top 4, that was the highest we could have got. We couldn't have got the 5th pick. And to think that Detroit only won 18 games this year and end up getting chucked out of the top 4 and landing at 5, and the improvement and the jump that we've seen from the Magic this year, and we're only 1 pick behind them. I don't know. I feel good about that. In that we're starting to do things the right way. Do you know what I mean? We've got the right approach, and it just goes to show the lottery is what it is. Interestingly, I'll get your thoughts in a minute, but I was listening to the Low Post earlier, and I know we saw shortly after the lottery that Dan Savage from OrlandoMagic.com said Orlando were 1 number away from getting the number 1 pick. Now, interestingly, Zach was in the green room when they were actually doing the draw itself. So I'm going to quickly paraphrase what he said, but he said when the draw was happening, basically, there's if you don't know, there's 14 ping pong balls in the machine, 1 to 14. And from what I can gather, the numbers are based on where you finished in the standings. So I think the Pelicans had the 4th, were the last team at the end of the lottery with the lowest chance. So they had 14. And then you had like the Spurs, the Pistons all had 1, 2, and so on. And I'm going to guess the Magic had 6, seeing as we finished with the 6th. So that was one of the numbers. There's 1,000 combinations of four numbers, and obviously we know the higher percentage you've got, the more number combinations. So ball 1 that was drawn was number 14, which meant every team was still in play, and apparently there was like 10-15 seconds in between the next ball coming out. So ball 2 was number 5, which apparently most teams were still in there at that point. Ball 3 was an 8, and he was saying executives and team representatives were flicking through paperwork and through documents that the NBA had given them, basically listing what teams' combinations, who's got who, and frantically trying to figure out in those 10 seconds whether you're still in there or not. And basically there were 11 balls left in the hopper, which makes sense because 3 had been drawn. 6 of those 11. So this was, we all had that initial, we were 1 number away. What makes this fine for us? I mean, it is what it is. But in the hopper of those 11 balls left, 6 of those numbers were sending Wembanyama to the Washington Wizards. So there was only 5 other numbers in there, and I'm going to guess one of those was ours along with 4 other teams. And yeah, and as we know, the last ball that was drawn was number 2, which sent Wembanyama to San Antonio. But yeah, interestingly, more than half of the balls left were actually for the Washington Wizards, and they missed out on that opportunity. I mean, it is what it is, and it's a lottery. But so we all had that like initial, oh no, we just missed out on it. But actually, if you're a Wizards fan, they really just missed out on it. And
they were going for the tank, weren't they?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But we talked about this on Tuesday night when it was all going on, that sending Wembanyama out west, where we've only got to face him twice a year, was best case scenario if we weren't going to get him. Like we said, with the Hornets at 2, we missed out on not having to face him 4 times a season. I know it's pretty small.
Good.
If he's that good, yeah.
Yeah.
But again, he could have gone to the Wizards. There was a really good chance with that last number he could have gone to the Wizards, and you would have seen him 4 times a year. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting thing. I thought I'd let you know if you hadn't heard that. But yeah, what how are you feeling, mate, after a few days out?
It's one of those where, how would I put this? I didn't expect to win it.
Mm-hmm.
And in the heat of the moment, you're disappointed because teams are getting drawn out, and you're like, wow, if we skip past the 6th pick, we're in the top 4.
Yeah.
And that was kind of where I was when we got that far down. I was like, oh, maybe we'll just sneak in and get like the third or the fourth pick. I didn't expect number one. And it was just when it hit the stick, I was like, oh, we're so close, because I think a top four pick would have been like really dangerous for the Magic to have, either for picking, because I do trust our front office, or for trading one way or another. We would have maximised that. So it was kind of the way I looked at it. You had a very much, as LinkedIn would call it, the blue sky thing, and Mikey and I was just like that far off almost. But at the same point in time, look what we turned the eighth pick into. You know, we got Wagner out of that, and they've nailed that. And you know, we've hit Cole with the 15th pick before, and we know what we're doing in terms of draft. And I think really Jonathan Isaac's just injuries that stopped that one. And then you say, well, really the only high end pick that we've had that hasn't in fact played out was Mo Bamba.
Yeah.
You know, Chuma is not a bad pick where we picked him up. I didn't think he was, you know, but injuries have played a role, and then the team's direction changed. So I'm confident in the front office, and it is what it is. And for me, if I look at Wembanyama, and it's kind of like, well, he might be that good. He might be that good. But then Yao Ming, when he came in, I remember all the hype around Yao at the time, and yeah, he was good, but injuries played a role, and you never know what's going to happen. And it's quite lucky if you're a Spurs fan that there's been 3 times where you've like had a real shot at going number one, and each time you've landed a generational big in David Robinson and Tim Duncan, and now you hit Wembanyama. So I think that's interesting. If you want to develop somewhere, I think San Antonio is quite a stable place to be with Greg Popovich.
And if you're a Hornets fan, I don't know if you saw this the other day. What was there? Is there 4 times they've landed the number 2 pick? And they missed out on the chance of getting the number 1 pick. And in those years, they missed out on Dwight Howard, Anthony Davis, Victor Wembanyama, and Shaq.
Yeah. They got Alonzo Mourning, which wasn't a bad consolation prize.
That's true.
And LaMelo Ball probably doesn't look like such a bad one, really, when you consider that James Wiseman.
And they did draft Kobe and mistakenly traded him, but there we go.
But he wouldn't go, would he? That was the thing.
No, that's true.
Yeah, I remember that happening. It was
it's. I'm feeling good about it. I mean, like you said, we're in a position where I think we can do a number of things. We can trade up, we can move back, we can package the picks, and maybe even just go after a veteran, or go for some added depth. There's plenty of things that we can do that we'll get into in a minute. But yeah, there's at the end of the day, if we stay at 6 and 11, there's plenty of decent players on the board that is going to help make this team better, and that's the most important thing.
And we saw the you mentioned it earlier, Mikey, the Bulls live reaction.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, it's fair to say, I think that they're not dancing and having fun. Now they're probably looking back at that. But there's been some pretty big news from Omar on Twitter that broke. That he's predicting, he's saying, or he's got inside knowledge, maybe, who knows, that Vucevic might be looking at coming back to the Magic. Or what's your I tell you now, if that happened, if you were a Bulls fan and you've lost out on Franz Wagner, the 11th pick, you've took a 2-year rental of Vooch, and then he comes back to Orlando, whilst we've also got Wendell Carter, you would be fuming. You would be absolutely furious. Like, what do you think? There's a chance of this, Mikey? Do you think it's he's quite credible, Omar? From all what I've followed him, he seems quite credible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly, mate. And we've seen this with his jersey leaks and that we've seen over the last few years. Yeah, he obviously knows a few people, I think, and that's probably a fair thing to say. He basically said that he thinks he's willing to give up financially to come and even some playing time to come back to Orlando and play where he loves to be. I think that is absolute. I mean, it's already highway robbery. You think? I mean, the other thing that people forget is, yes, we traded Vooch, and you got two future firsts. Wendell, who is arguably better than Vooch now. Is that a fair comment?
I think it's a fair comment.
And That doesn't mean Vooch in his prime. That means like if you're comparing the two players now. And we also offloaded Alfaro Camino's bad contract as well. So yeah, like you said, if you end up getting 2 first-round picks, Wendell, and then Vooch walks back through the door in 2 years' time for nothing, and you get him on a discounted deal. I mean, we talked briefly the other night about some of the centres that are on the market this summer, like Nasri, Mason Plumlee, Jakob Pertl's another one who he's if he goes anywhere else other than Toronto, he's going to want to start. He's that good, but you ain't going to find many players that are going to be better to back up Wendell than Vooch. And like we said, his biggest problem, Wendell, is staying healthy. You kind of expect him to only play 60 to 70 games if we're being realistic. Yeah. So you need somebody who's going to fill in that role for a good 20, 30 games, a good chunk of the season. And if you think with Vooch's floor spacing, he already knows. Now, obviously, this team is very different to what he knew, but it's familiar surroundings. And yeah, it's just going to open up the floor for Paulo Franz. Markel's already played with Vooch, so they're going to have that connection. It could be interesting, but I'm not going to get too carried away just yet because let's see what happens, because look, you never know. They might take a big in the draft, or they might end up acquiring one in a big trade. You just don't know. Not necessarily a centerpiece, but you might end up getting one as part of a package with something else. And it might not happen. The draft is the important thing, and what will happen after that, we will see. But yeah, what's your thoughts?
Well, first of all, he's a hell of a poster. That was my first thought. Well, and actually, this guy is usually pretty spot on. So I was I straight away was like, actually, I believe this. The second thing is, how can I put this? When Vooch, if this happens, it felt to me the type of move that a player does when they're going onto a championship team. Mm-hmm. Do you know when you see people signing for the Lakers and the Nets and the Celtics and stuff, and you go, I can't believe they're taking that massive discount to go there when they could have got this. And I was like, that's actually a statement that a 2-time All-Star, even though he's got history with the franchise, is saying, I'm going to take a discount, coming in and actually playing backup minutes. And then my third thought was, no matter what happens in the draft, could you imagine a bench lineup which has got Cole Anthony, Jonathan Isaac, and Nikola Vucevic standing at the scorer's table when you're feeling tired, and those 3 guys checking in?
They were starting for us not that long ago.
But that's 3. Yeah, but that's, you're looking at it and you're going, you've got a guy who's possibly one of the top 5 defenders in the NBA. Mm-hmm. You've got a guy who's just been a 2-time All-Star who still gets a double-double if you give him the minutes, and good 3-level scorer, really. And then you've got a guy who, once he settled into the role, was getting 6th Man of the Year nominations. And you look at that, and that would be demeaning. When you look at teams even like Boston now, like, if you see the high-end Eastern Conference teams, what their benches are, nobody's matching that bench.
Nah.
That's scary, and that you could even, depending on the lineup, you could even be looking at that and going, oh, Jalen Suggs is part of it as well. Another all-level NBA, like he's a top-end NBA defender. That's terrifying, that.
It's crazy to even contemplate, really. I mean,
it's lovely to contemplate.
Well, I'm just looking at Vuce's stats. He's only 32. He still averaged 17.5 points per game last year. 11 rebounds.
Awful. Terrible.
3 assists a game. How many minutes did he play? 33 minutes a night. 52% from the field. 35% from the 3-point line, which is around his career average anyway. if that option is on the table, and I saw some numbers floated around, because what's he coming off of, a 5-year $100 million deal, 4-year,
Yeah.
4-year $100 million deal. I think, what did I see? Was it 3 years, 40 million, something like that? That sort of figure. I mean, it's a really, really. I can't even. It doesn't really add up. I just can't really make much sense of it. It's
surreal, but then it's who's
posted. That's the word I'm looking for. Well,
it's who's posted the rumor.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, this is the way. It's not coming from, and this is no disrespect to Omar at all. It's not like this is sort of being leaked and talked about through a national media guy. This is a Magic fan who clearly has some contacts in and around the team and the franchise and knows some people. Yep. I trust Omar, I really do. I think there is something to it. Whether it pans out, like I said, is another question, and the Magic may decide to go another direction. But look, it answers a lot of the problems. We've said we need a backup centre this season. I don't want to go into the year with Moritz Wagner or Batadze, who I don't think's coming back, as your backup bigs. I don't think they provide enough. You want 3-point shooting. Vuce can provide that. You want veteran leadership. Vuce already adds that as well. So, and like I said, if you can get him on a deal, the other thing I saw was they're talking about maybe front loading the contract as well, which is a common thing we've seen Jeff do with players that he signed or re-signed or given extensions to. So yeah. We will see. It's going to be a really interesting summer because the Magic are not far away from being really, really good next season.
Or even closer if we put that in.
Well, we are. And I think it will actually signal the intent of where the front office want this team to go next year. We've seen Jeff be really patient, and what we've acquired over the last couple of years has proven why. But is he willing to speed that up a little bit and have a bit more urgency? Or because at the end of the day, the better players, this is the other thing, it's all right giving Paolo and Franz reps, but putting better players around them is also going to help them get better.
And Vuce spaces the floor.
Exactly. Vuce is a really good passer. So you've got another guy who's a really good decision maker, and that's a common thing that we've seen of players that the Magic like. And I think that's probably part of the reason why they kept hold of him for as long as they did. But yeah, it certainly ticks a lot of the boxes. I don't think there would be one Magic fan for everybody that say criticised Vuce for his time in Orlando, and that wasn't really a shot at Vuce. I think that was just a shot at the way the team was constructed. Vuce gave everything for the team, loved Orlando, still loves Orlando. I just think it would just be a perfect reunion, really, and to fleece the Bulls the way we did, it takes the piss, really, doesn't it?
Well, you know what, though? I noticed as well when the playoffs was going on that Evan Fournier doesn't seem too happy in New York, so maybe we can bring Evan back as well and get the gang. I'm not saying we should, by the way.
I know.
I'd have a laugh about that. Get the gang back together again and all this. But there you go. But it's interesting, Mikey. But I think looking the other way as well, obviously we've got these, looking at the mocks that are coming up, and I was interested in your thoughts on this. We've got obviously the 6th pick, and a lot of mocks have us taking Osar. I think it's Osar Thompson.
Osar.
I've done a poll there, haven't I? So we've got a 6'7" shooting guard. He's got that critical 6'11" wingspan. NBA draft rooms describe him as a Skywalker freak athlete, makes the game look easy. Not a great shooter yet, but there's time to develop that, and they felt he could really benefit working with NBA level shooting coaches. Mm-hmm. got comparisons to two former Magic players in Jason Richardson and Terence Ross. That's a popular name for our sixth pick. What are your thoughts on this, Mike? Have you got any thoughts yet?
Well, firstly, another comparison that I've seen is Andrew Wiggins.
Okay.
One of the best YouTube channels you'll be able to see it or catch up on a lot of these prospects is Hoop Intellect. So if you guys want to have a look at some of these players yourself, he does a really good breakdown on players' strengths, areas of improvement, their potential flaws, ceilings, and rough comparisons to players. But initially, I mean, I spent a good chunk of last weekend going through a lot of those videos and watching lots of highlights on a good chunk of the probably top 10, 12 players that are all sort of projected to go in and around the lottery. And I think the biggest takeaway, and I'll be a bit more specific about Asar in a minute, but other than Wembyama, I think everybody else, even including Scoot Henderson, everybody's got a flaw. And I think the further you go down the lottery, the flaws are quite dramatic. And I think this probably goes the same for both the Thompson twins, Asar and Eamon, is that they're both really good defenders. They're very athletic, good playmakers, good passers. But their biggest weakness is shooting the ball. And people seem to have Eamon above Asar. Asar seems to be the guy a little bit lower down people's not depth chart, sorry, down their big board. Eamon has a little bit more of a ceiling. But I'm just not convinced. I mean, we keep talking about one of the most important things the Magic have to add this offseason is 3-point shooting. And people keep talking about Thompson twins. Now, last season, Asar shot 48% from the field and 30% from the 3-point line. Now, the 3-point line I don't mind so much, and I believe he shot 38% in the playoffs last year for them. Right. But he only shot 67% from the free throw line. And Eamon, I think, was even lower than that. It was around about 63 or 64%. And I think I said this on Tuesday night. Philip Rossman-Reich, who I really value what Phil says, and he knows his stuff. And he talked about Cam Whitmore in the same breath, that one of the big red flags for Cam Whitmore, although he's a great scorer, is his free throw percentage is around 70%. And he said that is one of the biggest red flags for people, that if you want to have an idea of how a player can improve their shooting, if you look at their free throw percentage, that can give you a bit of an indicator of where they are. And I get the same feeling for Asar and Eamon Thompson, that their free throw percentage isn't good. And I think if you look at their shot mechanics, they don't look that great either. They have flashes like all these players do. That's why they're in the lottery and where they're projected to go. But I'm not that high on Asar Thompson at the moment. Obviously, we've got 4 or 5 weeks of more highlights and film to watch of these players, but I'm not convinced that he's who we're going to go for. And the fact that nearly every mock draft you read, from CBS to Bleacher Report to The Ringer and all these other ones, that they all have Asar in there. I mean, how many times have we seen all these mock drafts send in a certain player to the Magic and it never happens? So we'll see. He wouldn't be my pick at 6, that's for sure. But I'm not sure. Have you watched any game tape or anything? Any
Not really.
Highlights?
My thing is that what you're saying there, Mikey, about how things can change. I think pick 1, we all know, is locked.
Mm-hmm.
Like San Antonio might as well just get Wembanyama in now and start printing the jerseys.
Yep.
That's going to happen. Picks 2 and 3 are interchangeable. I know we spoke about this off air, and it's leaping a little bit ahead of where we were going to talk about, I guess. But I could really see Charlotte taking a little bit of a flyer, maybe, bearing in mind it's Charlotte as well. But if you look at their need, I could see Brandon Miller going there equally as you could see Scoot. I could see them taking Miller, and it's a bit of a. After that, then what happens? It seems more fluid. I think you're going to get Amen Thompson go 4 or 5. That seems to be, but I don't think there's a consensus 5th best player in the draft, so to speak. Someone where you go, that's your certain top 5. So a lot of things could happen. Someone could slip, someone could jump. Like we were in this position a couple of years ago when we got Jalen Suggs, and whereas Suggs slipped into 5 raised eyebrows, if you'd done that a few weeks prior, it would have been Kuminga going at 7. That was seen as a bona fide top 5, that draft, where it was, this is what it will be. And Kuminga was seen as being the 5th raw talent in that draft. And then obviously Scotty Barnes took a leap, and things panned out as they did, and we saw Grady went as well, higher than Kuminga. So it's interesting. I think there's a lot of tape to play out there yet, but I really wouldn't be surprised if you saw a change in the order 2 and 3. And then the other thing that comes into play, there was talk, and we'll come to the 11th pick, but there was talk about Brandon Miller having spoken to the Magic. There was whispers about that going on Twitter. And I've seen things where Portland might be willing to shop their pick. They might be looking to go win now. There's talk of them wanting to move it on to keep Dame Lillard and go with him. Bleacher Report said that Miller himself hasn't made a great impression in the pre-draft interviews. He's not meant to be in the shape you would hope he would be in when you're playing for your future. We know also there are huge question marks around this guy. Whilst he's not being charged with any crimes, there's question marks about his role in, shall we say, a murder. We know how Ja Morant has been recently in the news, where guns have been involved, and the lifestyle he has outside. We know what the Magic organization are like, but also he's the consensus top 3 pick. At this moment in time, he's drawn comparisons to a prime Danny Granger when you're looking at the Bleacher Report, which is a good player. So do we try this? Do we try and move up and take Miller? What's your thoughts on that, mate?
If it was me, and I said this in a group chat with you guys the other day, I'm only moving up the board for Scoot Henderson.
Yeah.
I just don't see. I'm not concerned about. I'm not really taking the off the court stuff into consideration with Brandon Miller at the moment. There's nothing. He's not been charged with anything. There's other than basically his weapon was used in a murder. That was it. But well, that's a whole other topic for another day. But if you just look at the player himself, I just don't understand how a 6'9" small forward really fits alongside Paolo and Franz. I just don't quite see it myself. The other thing that he's not good. He's not a great athlete. And if you've watched some of his highlights, when he's not the best at trying to create separation when he's getting his own shots. Now, if you think from a fit point of view, that you want the ball in Paolo and Franz's hands as much as possible. Now, you could use him as a spot-up 3-point shooter, and he's been compared to Chris Middleton, who's another comparison. But I don't see him as a great athlete. And this isn't a shot at Paolo or Franz, but I think the thing that we're lacking at the moment is that little bit of explosiveness and somebody with some downhill speed. And I kind of get why people talk about the Thompson twins, because that's one of their strengths, is getting out in transition. You've got that great athletes. They got that Ja Morant sort of explosiveness, getting to the rim. But personally, I just don't see the fit being that smooth next to Paolo and Franz. I think Scoot Henderson, I mean, let's be honest, we're still really, and as good as Markel is, we're still really searching for that bona fide guard. That, so, like, at the moment, Fultz feels like the most solid choice. But he's also not the best point guard in the league. Do you know? He's not considered, and this isn't a knock on Markel. He's not like he's considered a top 10 player in his position. The guard rotation. There's still lots of question marks there, and I think Scoot Henderson is potentially an All NBA player, a dynamic league guard who's got lots of really good areas. Like I said, athleticism, playmaking. He's really strong in the mid range, a bit like Markel. He's got scoring upside. He needs to improve from the 3-point line, but he shot 75% from the free throw line last year and still shot just close to 33% from three. So he's not a horrendous 3-point shooter either. But I feel like Scoot is a better fit alongside what we already have. And we've seen in the playoffs, like, you need stars. You need stars to win games. And on different nights, different players are going to step up and be that guy. And the more of those players that you have, now you could say Scoot having the ball in his hands takes the ball out of Paolo and Franz's hands, but on one night it might be Paolo's night where he goes off for 30, or another night it might be Franz that goes off for 30. It might be Scoot Henderson that can do the same. I just think you're just raising the team's ceiling. In fact, you're raising the team's floor by having another player like that. And even if he doesn't become an All-NBA player, you're improving the overall roster. And I think Scoot Henderson is the only player at the top of that draft that feels the most solid pick that could do that. Does that make sense?
There's a man in Wales right now listening to this, and he's just kicked the sofa over and hurt his toe even more. But I would say that I've seen 50-50 on the drafts who will go number 2 and who will go number 3.
Mm-hmm.
And if that number 3 pick is being shipped by Portland, maybe it's not Miller who we're interested in, and maybe it's the potential of Scoot. When you look at LaMelo Ball, is the point guard in Charlotte, and he is seen as the man, and LaMelo Ball, that team should be built around him, and Miller would be a good fit there. So then, would we go for the number 3 pick, try and help Portland win, and put Scoot in Orlando? I think with Fultz, the question is really health, because when we've seen him get healthy in the final third of the season, we know what he can do. So he could be that guy still. I think Philadelphia probably wishes they had Fultz for that series against Boston, and they might have been playing in the Eastern Finals right now. I think there's a lot of questions out there about the backcourt, because all 3 players have had their issues. All 3 point guards have had their issues with injuries. We've never seen Jalen Suggs get a proper run. You could look at him and you can clearly see the comparisons with Smart. If you want in that comparison, it's there. And then at the same point in time, like, I've drawn the comparison before, but Cole gets healthy, you can see the Brunson comparison. So it could be that we've got 3 guys who are seen as high-end guards, or we could be looking at it going, do we really need somebody else? But it seems as though, for me, health has always struck these guys at the wrong point. When they've just been getting their run together, it's taken them away. They hit Cole in college, it hit Fultz just after that, and then it hit Suggs when he came into the league. Whenever he's got a head of steam, it's hit him again. So we still don't fully know what we've got, but we could have the answer on our roster as it is. But we do need to make at least one of these 2 picks. If we keep them, if we don't trade up, we need to make one of them count, which I've got confidence in the front office that they'll do.
If I had to guess now, I don't think we're moving.
Yeah,
I think we'd stay as we are. If we had to take a guess now, I mean, how do you see the top of the draft playing out? So you said obviously Wemby's going 1.
Wemby's got interesting point, Mike. I'll just say one thing before I come on to that. If it was a win now with Portland, and we have
Hmm.
spoken to Miller saying we've talked about the number 3 pick, it'll be really interesting putting 2 and 2 together that we've had that conversation and Vooch is coming back and Portland are in, like the rumours of Vooch coming back and Portland are in win now. Would Portland want somebody who can play the 4 or a 5? Would Wendell be part of that package, which would bring Vooch in? Like that's on my mind where I'm looking at it going, if there was going to be a deal with Portland, you'd probably think that it's going to be the 6, the 11, and then centering around someone like Wendell, maybe
Hmm.
going in that direction. So I don't think it's out of the realms. If it was most franchises, I would have went Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson, Miller. That would be the top 3 if it was happening tomorrow. But it's the Hornets. And I look at it and I'm like, they've got LaMelo. It's the left field move. They're not a team that puts the emphasis on character that we do.
Mm.
The Charlotte Hornets have had massive personnel issues in recent years, and I don't think they're as well run a franchise as the Magic. I could see it going 1, 2, and 3, but I could see Scoot going 3 if it was no
I
fit.
think, like you said, I think that's a very good point. Um, if I'm Charlotte, I'm still taking Scoot Henderson. For me, he's the second best player in the
Yeah,
draft. I don't think there's. I just don't really see why it's even a topic of conversation. Really, I don't think he's. I don't think Brandon Miller is anywhere better than Scoot Henderson. But like I said, when you're taking fit into consideration, I mean, let's be honest. The Hornets don't really have anybody else other than LaMelo Ball.
no.
So when you're in that position, you take the best player available, and
And
the
you could
best
have
player
him.
on the board at 2 is going to be Scoot Henderson, and you can worry about fit later on. You might even decide, you know what, Scoot Henderson's a better player to build around in the long term, and cash in on LaMelo Ball and bring in somebody else to build around Scoot and whoever else. Scoot can play off the ball as well, and I think LaMelo can play off the ball. Um, and you might actually see a very fun backcourt with the 2 of them because they're very different players. Um,
Rozier's still there, isn't he?
yeah, but he's not that good, is he?
He's
Let's
not
be
that, but
honest.
he's. If they were looking to get into a win now, though, they would be like, well, Lamelo, Rozier, Miller.
If I'm Charlotte, I'm not winning now.
Oh,
I'm not winning now.
you just don't know, though. I just look at it and
But like you said, they're not the best run franchise, and
no.
you're not quite sure what direction they're trying to go in. If you're the Charlotte Hornets, if I was in their position, you're taking Scoot, and that should be the end of it. But like you said, I don't think people are necessarily sure. I mean, you could look at it and go, what's LaMelo, a 6'7" point guard? And you
Mm-hmm.
could pair him with a 6'9" small forward and Brandon Miller. It makes sense on paper, but when you're picking that high at the draft, you're trying to knock that pick out of the park, aren't you? And get the best player in the in the long run that you can get. But at the end of the day, I think they're still going 2 and 3, whichever order you think it's going to go in. I can't see
Charlotte.
Eamon Thompson. I can't see Eamon Thompson jumping into the 3rd pick. I really can't. And unless, like we talked about, the off the court stuff with Brandon Miller becomes an issue and front offices become concerned about that and he slips down the board a little bit. But I just can't see it myself. Um, and then at 4, 5, I think it's really Eamon Thompson, Asar Thompson, Cam Whitmore's going to be on the table. For me, my pick at 6 right now is Taylor Hendricks from UCF. My only concern with that is playing time, and you're drafting a guy at 6 to essentially be a backup forward, who I think can play a little bit of small ball 5 as well. But again, when you're picking at 6, I mean, we've got the luxury of, we're in that position now where you can go, well, we can draft for need a little bit more, but you can also take that upside swing. Personally, at 6, I would take the upside swing, take Taylor Hendricks, and then use the 11th pick with a bit more with need in mind. Which transitions nice straight onto the 11th pick.
That's all I was going to say, Mikey. There is we're talking all about Portland, but if Charlotte wanted to rebuild a young, fresh starting lineup, they could get themselves pick 6 and pick 11, or and give themselves a small forward and a power forward to go alongside Rozier and Ball in the backcourt, and then they're just looking to fill their centre position properly. You know, they could get themselves one of the Thompsons, perhaps. They could get themselves an elite level athlete with one of those picks who LaMelo could do the Miles Bridges thing for. You know, or Seth Thompson could feed off that, where someone's just throwing him Lob City all day. We're a good trading partner for them if they choose.
Yeah, I mean, we saw this on Tuesday. I brought this up with before the draft lottery was even drawn, that the Magic's picks or potential picks of where they were with their odds had the number 1 ranked value amongst all the teams, and the fact that we're still at 6 and 11, and you've got an early second round pick as well.
Yeah.
The Magic have enough that they can move up in this draft. I don't see that being an option. An issue, but I'm not sure. I just don't feel like we need to make a trade big.
The phone should ring for us rather than the other way around.
Unless, like I said, unless the front office are absolutely enamoured with Brandon Miller or Scoot, then yeah, you sit put and see who lands in your lap.
Pick 11, Mikey.
Grady Dick, hey?
That's the name that's been springing up.
What do you think of Dick, Gary?
Oh, magnificent. Well, he's known for his shooting, isn't he? And
yeah.
He's also got credit for his ball IQ. So you know, maybe Dick could be the one in the eye for us, so to speak. But I think, in all seriousness, if you were looking at a player who's in the lottery outside of the top 5 picks, who fits a need the most for the Magic, I'm not saying best player available. 6'8", high basketball IQ, strong college program, good fundamentals, not an awful athlete. Not a pun here, but good size. But more than anything, it's the shooting, and he fits the Orlando Magic need the most. And in a lot of mocks, he's mocked at 11. And yeah, there's comparisons to Kevin Huerter's out there. There's
Cam Johnson's another really good one, I thought.
Yeah, but they aren't bad comparisons for us. And his 3-point shooting, to be honest, looks good.
That's the most attractive thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
His size, as you said, and his 3-point shooting at 40% last year. Good off the ball scorer, good in transition. He's a good pull-up 3-point shooter as well. He's actually got a little bit of playmaking. I'm not sure his handles are great. I think that's an area that he can work on, but he can make a pass. And the other thing, he's actually a pretty good athlete.
Yeah.
If you watch some of his highlights, he's actually quite a good shot blocker, and I think he's a pretty solid defender. I think it's a bit like Paolo. I think he's defensively, I think he's a little bit underrated. I think probably he gives up a little bit because he's not the biggest lad at 6'7". He only weighs 195 pounds. So I think strength-wise he could get bullied a little bit. But it just feels like if the Magic are just gonna add 2 draft picks this summer and that's all they do and roll everybody else back, it feels like a player like Grady Dick is a player that you could just slot in and play. And just his 3-point shooting alone is going to help everybody else. It's whether you draft, because at the end of the day, this is the way the NBA's been going for quite a few years, is the importance of the 3-point shot. But we're drafting a guy in the lottery. Do you want to draft a guy for now who's just a good 3-point shooter, or do you want to take a swing for a guy who has got more upside on other areas of his game as well? And let's be honest, he's not necessarily guaranteed to start either. You're talking about another player. That's the crazy thing. You think at 6 and 11, you could take 2 swings on players, and they might be both players that come in off the bench.
Yep.
But I think it makes too much sense. I'm not even convinced he's even going to be on the board at 11 when the Magic picks their second shot. I think Dallas at 10. I think there's a chance he might go there.
Yeah.
As a player that you can easily slot next to Luka Doncic.
So do you take him at 6?
Would I take Grady Dick at 6? No, I don't. No, I wouldn't. No. Personally, I would, like I said, I would go for the upside pick at 6, whether that's a Cam Whitmore, a Taylor Hendricks. They would be my 2 picks if I had to choose. And then, like I said, you can pick for need at 11. If Grady Dick's on the board, then it feels like a no-brainer. But then there's other players, Keontae George of Baylor. Who's the other guy that we've been... Jordan Hawkins, who's a really good 3-point shooter as well. Bryce Sensabaugh, who's actually from Orlando. He shot 40% from 3 last year as well. 6'6", small forward. So there are players that are going to be there at 11 that are still going to add something that we need. But I just, if you take the 3-point shot away from Grady Dick, I don't see anything else that he does at a really elite level that I would want to pick him at 6. I just don't think it's necessary. And like I said, we've got free agency. If you add Vooch to the roster, you're improving the 3 in that area as well. And the most important thing is you're hoping for internal development. You're hoping the players that we already have improve their own 3, because if they don't, then that's going to put a limit on how good the Magic can be. So you need more 3-point shooting to spread the floor, but you also need who we've already got on the roster to continue to improve as well. It's interesting. There's loads of ways this could go. I don't see the Magic necessarily trading out and trading down the draft. I think that's more likely at 11. I think, for example, if Grady Dick's off the board and the Magic have got him high on their big board and he's gone, then perhaps you see them trade back from 11 to then go after another player who can spread the floor. But I don't know, maybe they'll trade the 11th pick for another future first and push it on another year and maybe get a veteran back in return that can help this team now. Because you're talking about adding 2 more rookies to this team, and we're already one of the younger teams in the league. So that's another option, is do you trade 11 for veteran help?
I'll be honest, I think we're that far down the road, unless it's something where something has changed. I'm kind of like, let's just roll with it. And we've got 2 swings, a bit like we had when we had the 5th and the 8th. We've got 2 swings. At least one of them's hit, probably both, with Suggs and Wagner, I think. And I would take 2 swings again. Double the chances. We know that we can get value beyond the top 10. We already have already. We've got good scouting. The front office, I think, any questions that were there about the diligence that we do have been answered with not Paulo Banchero with the Franz Wagner pick for me. The Franz Wagner pick was wow, what have we done? And they proved everybody wrong. And Franz looks like he could arguably, we've had this discussion on here before, be the best player in that class right now, because we haven't seen what Cade Cunningham can do really yet. And then you're saying, well, is it Franz there, or are you going Mobley? That's kind of, because I do think Franz is better than Scotty Barnes. I don't even think that's a discussion really.
No, it's not.
Really, like you're looking at that and you're going, well, they've earned their stripes. Jalen Green might get a resurgence with a better coach. Who knows? But I think there's no question there. So obviously there's a lot of questions to be had, but just around the league, Mikey, we're not going to go too far into this, but the Ja Morant situation's reared its head again with another Instagram story with a gun, and it's caused a bit of a media divide where we've seen JJ Redick say he hasn't committed any crimes, and we've seen Charles Barkley really go hard back at JJ Redick and what's going on. So where do we stand on this Morant situation? What's your take, really, Mikey? Who do you agree with?
If you haven't seen Charles Barkley, I don't know how you can disagree with what Charles said personally. I mean, yeah, in theory, he didn't break any laws, but as they said on TNT the other night, there's clauses in NBA players' contracts of, I think, was it a morality clause, where there's certain things that players are expected to do or not do. And you're talking about a kid who's like, I mean, at the start of last season, before people really started hating on the Grizzlies because they were becoming a team that people would, as you were, beginning to really dislike with the demeanour and the way they behaved. But before that, Ja Morant was a young, exciting player. He was a face of a franchise. He was becoming one of the faces of the NBA on one of the bright and upcoming teams in the Grizzlies. And he's just acting like an absolute moron. I mean, the first incident, it's just stupidity. That's all it is. It's just absolute stupidity. And I hope honestly, I hope that's all it is, Gary, because we've seen this with players in the past that they can't, not just in basketball, in the NBA, we've seen it in various sports, but some players just can't handle the limelight and they can't handle the attention that they get. And he has really skyrocketed up to the level that he's been at, and there's been a lot of pressure put on him because the Grizzlies have quickly become one of the better teams in the NBA. But to make one mistake is one thing. To do it again, you just can't defend that. And he already had an 8-game suspension the last time for doing it on Instagram Live at a strip bar, waving a gun around. To do that once and get a slap on the wrist and get an 8-game ban, have a face-to-face meeting with Adam Silver, the NBA commissioner, and then 2 months later to do it again is just absolutely stupidity. And the guy's about to ruin his career if he hasn't already began to do so already, because he's going to start being labelled as a problem player. And there was hints of that with various incidents this season as well, wasn't there? And we saw the reports that Steven Adams was talking about. I think the Grizzlies as a whole, that they need to stop going out. They need to concentrate on playing basketball because they were close to becoming a really good team. And it's quickly unravelling for them. And if you're a Grizzlies fan, I mean, it's just got to be heartbreaking, really, because you put all your time, effort and enthusiasm and excitement into a team that you really believe in, and then your best player goes out and behaves the way he's done. And I just hope that, and I'm not saying he needs to get help. He just needs to grow up and and face it himself. And the fact that he had he went to some therapy or something for the couple of weeks that he was suspended for. And I'm not being funny. If that wasn't a wake up call the first time around, I mean, we're looking at, I've heard like 25 game suspensions being floated around as a rough figure that we could get. Personally, I think it should be even bigger than that, because kids watch these players, kids idolize these players. They don't, and that's the end of it, really. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think? Is there anything really to add to that?
My view is, firstly, the therapy thing. In my opinion, that I said it the last time round, that was never, in the time period that it was done, going to solve anything other than being a token gesture.
Correct.
And I said that before, and I didn't want to be right, but I felt it was a token gesture that wasn't going to do anything in that short period of time. I think at the very best, he's badly advised. At the very best, he is badly advised, and he needs to really consider who his friends are that he's surrounding himself with. Because if you're really his friend, and you've got a friend who is one of the top players in the NBA, you really need to be saying right now, put the phone down. Let's not record this. Let's not put it live, and let's move away from what we're doing, because this guy's a meal ticket to his friends. And he needs to think about, am I really their friend? Or am I because I'm Ja Morant? Because if you're Ja Morant's friend, you're just saying, you've got a massive deal here. You've got a deal with Nike. You're one of the best people going. If it's one of my friends, I'll be saying, have a word with yourself. Let's not bring this rubbish to you. Stay out of it. Like when I qualified to teach, Mikey, one of my friends said to me when we were going out on nights out, he went, if anything kicks off here, just walk away. Don't lose your DBS. Just walk away.
Yeah.
And like anything else will be handled. You know, like that was the way they said it, but they went, don't be there. And it's one of those where that's actually a friend saying that, because it's your livelihood gone. Now, not that it ever did get to that, but somebody should be saying to Ja Morant, we're ruining this guy's career, his livelihood, his reputation. And if what Skip Bayless was saying was true about his mother threatening people and then calling him up to come down and sort it out, she really needs to have a word with herself as well, because it's her own son, which she's instigating into dangerous situations. You know, there's talk about when he was in this situation in the mall, that apparently all came from his mother. Like, who in their right mind, as a parent, you're a parent, Mikey, I'm not, who in their right mind would say, hold on a second, I've had a confrontation in the mall. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the phone up and I'm going to get my kid down here.
Yeah.
Always your kid, no matter what age. I'm going to get my kid down here to put them in a confrontation with you, whether it's a famous person or not. You don't do that.
No.
You don't
Absolutely
do that.
not.
So it's bad advice, and it's bad advice all around, and somebody needs to get a hold of it and get a hold of it quick. Is it a cry for help? I don't know, but if it is a cry for help, the Memphis Grizzlies need to be stepping back in here and saying, you will go to therapy and you will do this, and we will hold you out until you've actually satisfied some professionals or something to say that you are in a safe place to be going on the road again as a responsible adult. Because you keep going around, you go around and you ask for, take the gun situation out of it, but if you go around and you poke at the bear enough, someone's going to lash back at some point, whether you're a celebrity or not. And he's going to get...
At the end of the day, whether his mum's not being a good influence, or his dad's not being a good influence, or his friends, or other extended family, at the end of the day, it's all on Ja Morant. He's putting himself in that situation. And it's like anything in life. If you surround yourself with idiots, you're going to become an idiot. It's like, you know, I've done personal training for a long, long time. If you're overweight and you're unhealthy and you're unfit and you're surrounded by people who are the same, who have bad eating habits and don't exercise, you're likely to follow them. And I think it starts with surrounding yourself with better people. Now, I don't think it's as easy and as cut and dry as just going, right, I'm going to never speak to them again. Do you know what I mean? But you have to begin to surround yourself with better people, or start taking yourself out of situations that are getting you in trouble. Now, I mean, we could spend all night on this topic. It's just not.
It's crazy though.
It's ridiculous. At the end of the day, I mean, if again, go back to the first incident. He's the one that recorded himself on Instagram Live.
Yeah.
And the second incident, his friend is recording them on Instagram Live. Knowing that he's got a camera, your friend's got a camera and you sat in the car and he's recording you, and you still pull a gun out, it's just stupidity. And there's no excuse. There's nothing else you can really say. You can't support it. You can't. And like you said, JJ Redick, and I love JJ. I think we're all big fans of JJ and a lot of what he does. His podcast is great. He was a great player in the NBA, especially for the Magic. He has some great takes, but he was massively wrong on what he said.
Yeah.
To say that he didn't break any laws is not the point. That is, he's missing the point on this. It's not about breaking laws. He's setting an example for so many people, for millions around the world, for kids. That's the biggest thing, is the kids. Like, kids see that. And the fact that Nike, I don't know if you saw that, have removed his shoe off of the Nike app.
Yeah.
All these endorsements and all these deals and all these sponsorships that he's been getting, he's going to start to see disappear into thin air very soon if he doesn't change his ways. At the end of the day, and it's like Charles said on TNT, last point, because it's getting boring now. But he said that there's things in the contract that players are expected not to do, like you're not allowed to go skydiving, you're not allowed to go skiing, you're not allowed to ride a motorbike. All these things that put you in danger that can affect your playing. If you get injured and you fall off a motorbike and you break your arm, it's going to affect your playing career. It's going to affect you. It's going to affect your team. It's going to affect the NBA. And yeah, I mean, I wasn't surprised, but anyway, let's move on, because I had enough talking about Ja Morant.
The last thing really is just the NBA finals are underway, and we've obviously got the Lakers and the Nuggets, and we've got the Heat and the Celtics. Bit of a nightmare for G, especially. Any thoughts so far on these two series?
I'm going to be honest. I've only been watching like the all possessions highlights. I haven't been watching the full games, but I've got a pretty good idea. I mean, game one, Miami and Boston. Boston have not been good at home this year. What have they? They've lost more games at home than they've won in the playoffs.
But they were coming off a really hard game against, well, not a really hard game, but they were coming off a hard series, I would say, against Philly.
Even so. I mean, I said this on, it's either last week's episode, I said to G, didn't I? You've got to take the 8th seed number away from Miami. You just got to forget about the 8th seed against the 2nd seed in this matchup, because like, Miami are legit, and I really think they've got a good chance of winning it. And I'm not turning this into us supporting the Miami Heat by any stretch of the imagination. But you texted me actually the other day and said about, do you like Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo? Because they're two players that you can't dislike. All you can do is respect the way they play. Now, Miami as a team, obviously, interstate rivals, we don't like them, and that's that.
Kyle Lowry,
maybe. but I actually want them to beat Boston in this series.
Right.
I want the Nuggets to win the whole thing
Yeah.
because it means the three that we hate won't win it. But I think Miami have got a really good shout of beating Boston in this series, and the Nuggets are now 2-0 up on the Lakers. I just hope they sweep them. I really hope they sweep them, and they've made a game of it. The Lakers the last few nights they are playing really hard.
I don't think it'll be a sweep.
I don't think it'll be a sweep, but it'll be nice because they're feeling good. They've been one, like you said last week, they're one of the most informed teams since the trade deadline.
Yeah,
coming into the playoffs with a lot of momentum, feeling good about themselves, beat the Grizzlies, beat the Warriors, but to then get dumped out in 4 against the Nuggets would be really nice.
do you know what it is? I just want it for Jokic.
Yeah.
I just want it for him. And even though at times we know, like when we saw him slap T. Ross, he's just a fantastic player. He's brilliant to watch. The numbers he puts up are unreal. And I just want Jokic to get to the finals and then do it from there and see what happens. The Miami series, I've said it before how good I think Spoelstra is. And I was like, that is a hell of an advantage. And I'll say it again, I don't think the Heat are all of that. And I said that the season preview, I don't think they are. But in the playoffs, you've got playoffs Jimmy Butler. And playoffs Jimmy Butler is a different player to regular season Jimmy Butler. And Spoelstra in the playoffs now, you look at the 4 coaches that are in, even if it was just the playoffs as a whole, or the league as a whole, you could say Spoelstra's the best. Pop might have something to say about that. But Spoelstra is the X factor for anybody that play because he's that good as a coach. He's so unsung. And then you put Butler in. We've seen what he can do, and he raises his game. And if it comes down to the clutch, and that ball's in Jimmy Butler's hands, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. What I would say though is, and I'm not saying I love the Celtics or anything like that, but if it was the Orlando Magic, as much as the same way like Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler, I wouldn't mind it if Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown were the 2 cornerstones for the Magic either. You know, because they're not players that I dislike.
It's fans, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fans. Look, it's not like for me, I'm not going to work and having water cooler conversations with Celtics fans and Heat fans, and so it doesn't matter as much. I don't want Kyle Lowry to win it. That's where I'm at. I just don't want Lowry getting a ring. But for either of those pairs, Bam and Jimmy Butler or Tatum and Brown, you would love having those on you as your centerpieces for your franchise. But overall, I just want to see Jokic just go in the finals and do what he does because I think he's awesome.
He deserves to win.
He deserves to win, and there is a legit case that he's still the MVP. Yeah. You can get that case. But there we go. So, Mikey, is there anything else you would like to add?
No, mate. I think that's it. We've got a month now to wait to the draft itself, and rumours galore, I'm sure, and there'll be players coming in for workouts and conducting interviews. So we'll be keeping an eye on all of that. It'll be interesting to see who comes into Orlando. I think there's going to be quite a few players going in and out of the door, doing their prep ready for the draft. So we shall see. We shall see what happens.
Exciting times, but as always, thank you for listening or watching, or maybe both. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Orlando Magic UK. Leave us your comments. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Orlando Magic UK. So from Gideon's Cookies, Mikey, and myself, go Magic.